Massive pro-democracy demonstrations continue in Hong Kong. The chief executive, Leung Chun-ying, is again calling on demonstrators to stop their protest. He says Hong Kong must stick to the policy of one country and two systems. CCTV's In Hong joins us from Beijing with the latest.
Yes, Mike. Hong Kong Chief Executive Leung made the remarks when speaking at the National Day reception. He said Beijing has confirmed one person, one vote will take effect for the election of Chief Executive in 2017.
It's understandable that different people may have different ideas about a desirable reform package, but it's definitely better to have universal suffrage than not. It's definitely better to have the chief executive elected by 5 million eligible voters than by 1,200 people.
So enormous crowds of protesters have paralyzed the central financial district, and the rallies are spreading further. And organizers threaten to occupy central government buildings, so if their demands aren't met by Thursday. They want more freedom selecting candidates, and right now their options are limited to an approved pool of candidates. Economists say that the protests thus far will cost Hong Kong more than $5 billion, and Beijing has called the protests illegal. Mike?
What's the general reaction there on the Chinese mainland, would you say?
Yes, Mike, a lot of chat room and instant messaging bars has accused the people of Hong Kong of demanding voting rights they never had when the island was a British colony. In the comment section of the Hong Kong news stories posted on Tencent, one of the most popular social media sites here, and one person writes, well, quote, "They are spoiled." The person then asks, did the people of Hong Kong have such benefits under the British government? Well, the protests are provoking patriotic feelings too. Hong Kong is China's Hong Kong, and writes another QQ users. Still another writer says that Hong Kong's future lies with the mainland. And everyone knows this, the author writes, whether or not they would like to admit it. So when China negotiated the end of British rule, Beijing promised Hong Kong's one country, two systems, and Beijing kept that promise. And what many mainland students have been complaining about is one country, two standards. They're accusing the demonstrators of applying a double standard unfairly to the government. You might say this is a case of a one country and two very different opinions. Back to you, Mike.
In Hong, in Beijing. For more analysis, we welcome back Victor Gao. He's a Chinese international relations analyst. Victor, one of the things that doesn't seem to be getting a lot of traction, I should say, in the reporting here in the West is about the changeover in 1997. Martin Jacques writes in The Guardian that Hong Kong was a British colony, forcibly taken from China, and all of its 28 subsequent governors were appointed by the British government. Under British rule, it never enjoyed democracy. You were the interpreter for Deng Xiaoping, and what are your recollections going back to that time, and what are your thoughts about today?
Well, first of all, I think Deng Xiaoping proposed the genius concept of one country, two system, which actually broke the deadlock in the Chinese-UK negotiations about the return of Hong Kong in 1997. And I think the concept of one country, two system will continue to guide Hong Kong forward in the coming years and decades. It will make sure that Hong Kong will keep its capitalist system, which is different from what mainland China has. Now, coming back to the point we are talking about in Hong Kong, I think Hong Kong as a democracy, people there have the legal right to demonstrate and protest. However, when the protesters do exercise their democratic rights, they need to do so by abiding by the law and listening to the all instructions by the police. Now, in the Occupy Central movement that we are witnessing right now, there are cases where the protesters actually disobey the orders from the police, and they are actually violating the rights of other people in Hong Kong who want to go to school, who want to go to work, etc. So I think today they are issuing ultimatum about, having the chief executive to resign, or about China changing its position on the nominating committee, for example. I think issuing such ultimatum is not helpful. And also I think it's time to urge and appeal to the protesters that when you exercise your rights of protest and demonstrate, you need to abide by the law. And the rule of law should be respected by everyone in Hong Kong, because without rule of law, you are not going to get democracy anyway. And it is a much more constructive way to express your political opinion or position if you do so by abiding by the law rather than violating the rule of law in Hong Kong. That's the key message that the protesters in the streets in Hong Kong need to listen. And I think this not only applies to Hong Kong, it applies to every country in the world. Say that in the United States, in UK, for example, in France, etc. So restraint need to be applied to both sides, the law enforcement agency in Hong Kong, but also the protesters in the street. They need to do so by abiding by the law rather than violating the law.
What do you think the next steps are in all of this?
I think right now there is a standoff. Fortunately, today is still a holiday in Hong Kong. And so the collateral damage to the economic and financial activities in Hong Kong still could be controllable. But once Hong Kong resumes the working schedule, then the current standstill, which may further escalate according to the demands raised by the protesters, will become more and more of a toll on the economic and political and the financial situation in Hong Kong. For example, I was in Hong Kong on September the 29th and 30th, and I saw with my own eyes that while the protesters themselves were more or less peaceful, but the consequences that they created by occupying streets, occupying major traffic routes, etc., was horrendous for Hong Kong. Schools had to be closed. Kids can no longer go to school in Hong Kong. And then the financial market is coming down. Property price probably will come down very soon. And people cannot get around in the areas occupied by the protesters. And also, I think garbage bags are piling up by the roadside because the garbage trucks can no longer move back and forth to collect them. So I would say the collateral damage by the illegal occupation and demonstrations are such that Hong Kong, as a very small and compact place, cannot afford to sustain for the long term. It is time for the protesters to resort to better means. For example, if they really want to protest, they can apply for approval and do the demonstration in Victoria Park, which is big enough to accommodate all the protesters in Hong Kong.
Well, Victor, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks so much for joining us from Beijing, and we'll be right back.
Now you can watch CCTV America wherever you are. On your smartphone, tablet, or computer. Live streaming is available anytime at your fingertips. Just go to cctv-america.com and click Watch Us Live to get involved.